Who is speaking in your head right now and who, exactly, is listening? That voice, the one narrating your thoughts, your plans, your endless inner debates, it never shuts up. It comments on everything, judges constantly, and pretends it's in charge. But if you really stop and look at it, something strange happens. You realize you don't control it. You don't know what it's going to say next.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
Thoughts just rise spontaneously, out of nowhere. And that one realization cuts through everything we've been told about who we are. Alan Watts, pulling from both Western philosophy and Eastern teachings, pointed out what most people miss. That voice in your head isn't actually you. It feels like you, but it's not. It's a process, a pattern, a conditioned, socially constructed narrative shaped by your culture, your upbringing, your language molded over time by other people's voices that eventually got absorbed into yours. Your inner critic might sound suspiciously like your parent, your teacher, some authority figure you didn't even realize left a mark. But because that voice runs on autopilot and never takes a break, we mistake it for the self. We confuse the narrator with the observer. And so, we live locked inside a story of psychological fiction that says, I am this person, with this identity, these roles, these problems. We become actors who've forgotten their acting. Watts calls this the illusion of the separate self, the sense of being an isolated I inside a body, cut off from the rest of the universe. But according to this view, there is no separate self, there never was. The I you think you are is just a fleeting ripple in a vast ocean of consciousness. A pattern that arises and dissolves inside something much bigger, something you can't see because it's what's doing the seeing. And once you see through that illusion, it changes everything. Because suddenly, you're not the thoughts. You're not the roles. You're not the voice. You're the awareness behind the voice. And that awareness, it's not personal. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't have a name, a gender, a past. It doesn't identify with your opinions or your anxieties. It doesn't judge what arises. It just witnesses. Purely. Impartially. Silently. The inner voice is loud, but the real you is quiet. And here's where things get even weirder. When you try to observe the voice, you realize you're the one watching. But if you try to observe the watcher, you hit a wall. You can't find it. You can't turn awareness into an object. Because it's what's doing the observing. It's always behind, always present, and never changing. That's what Watts means when he talks about pure consciousness. It's not something your brain produces. It's not a function. It's the field in which all experience appears. It's the space in which thoughts, sensations, motions, the body all arise and pass. So instead of thinking that consciousness is inside you, the perspective flips completely. You are inside consciousness. Not just your body. Not just your personality. All of it. Every experience you've ever had has happened in awareness. And that awareness has no edges. No boundaries. It's not divided into individual pieces. From the standpoint of non-duality, this is the key. Consciousness is one, infinite, undivided. The separate selves we all believe we are, those are temporary waves. They look distinct, but they're made of the same water. When the wave rises, we call it me. When it falls, we grieve. But the ocean never leaves. The ocean never changes. That's the real self. The timeless presence beneath all stories. And the voice in your head? That's just part of the game. Watts described it like a cosmic game of hide-and-seek. Consciousness hides from itself by pretending to be these little individual selves, caught up in their problems and goals and dramas, all to rediscover its own infinite nature over and over again. It's not a mistake. It's not a flaw. It's how the play works. But the problem starts when we forget it's a play. When we believe we are the character. When we mistake the costume for the actor. When we cling to the story and fight to protect an identity that was never real to begin with. And that's where suffering creeps in. When we're stuck in that mental narrative, trying to control what can't be controlled, constantly chasing a future version of ourselves we think will finally be complete. But presence doesn't need improvement. It doesn't need validation. It just is. Recognizing this isn't about adopting a belief. It's about seeing directly. That's where practices like mindfulness and inquiry come in, not as spiritual rituals, but as ways of cutting through the noise. When you bring attention to the present moment, when you focus on the breath, or the sensations in your body, or the space between thoughts, you start to notice something deeper. You start to see that awareness is always here, that it doesn't come and go, that even when thoughts are swirling, even when emotions are intense, the background doesn't change. There's always a witness, always a space, and that space is not separate from you. It is you. Self-inquiry questions like who is aware of this voice, or who am I without this thought, aren't puzzles to solve, their pointers. They lead you away from concepts and toward direct experience. They break the trance of identification. Because the real trap isn't the mind. It's believing everything the mind says. And once you stop believing, you start living. Not from the story. From the silence beneath it. From awareness. From being. And when you live from there, life isn't something to conquer or control. It's something to participate in, fully. Without clinging. Without resistance. With presence. Because presence doesn't separate you from the world, it connects you to it. It shows you that the boundary between you and everything else was never real. That the sense of division was always an illusion. The ego was never you. It was a temporary character in a cosmic play. And the moment you stop identifying with it, the moment you see it for what it is, a pattern of thought, a function, not a fact, you return to what's always been true. You are not a thing. You are the space in which things rise. You are not your mind. You are the consciousness that witnesses it. And the voice, the one still talking, even now, it doesn't need to stop. You just don't need to believe it. That's the freedom. If any part of this struck a chord with you, if the voice in your head suddenly feels a little less like you, and a little more like just noise, then you're already on the path. Not towards something new, but back to what's already here. Awareness. Stillness. Reality without commentary. And if this shift matters to you, if it helps you see through the illusion, even for a second, then hit like, drop a comment, and share it with someone whose inner monologue could use a reality check. And subscribe for more ways to see past the story and into the stillness behind it. Because once you know who you aren't, you're free to remember who you've always been. So now you've seen the cracks. You've felt that subtle shift, that moment when the inner voice doesn't feel quite so authoritative anymore. Maybe for a second, you even stepped back and realized, wait, I'm not the one talking. I'm the one hearing it. And that moment, that's everything. That's the doorway Alan Watts kept pointing toward. Because once you stop mistaking the noise for the self, you start living in an entirely different reality. One where you don't have to fix yourself before you're allowed to feel whole. One where you stop striving to become something, because you realize you already are. But here's where it gets tricky, because the voice doesn't give up easily. It'll say, okay, sure, I'm not really you, but I can help. Let's think our way into presence. Let's figure out awareness. Let's understand how to be free. And just like that, you're back in the loop. That's the thing, the mind will try to own every insight, every breakthrough. It wants to claim awakening as another trophy. But the truth is, you don't wake up by thinking more. You wake up by seeing clearly, by recognizing what's always been here beneath the noise. Watts wasn't suggesting we should destroy the ego, or stop thinking altogether. That's another trap. The goal isn't to shut off your mind. It's to stop identifying with it. Thoughts will still come. Stories will still run. But you'll no longer be trapped inside them. You'll start noticing the gaps. The quiet space between thoughts. The pause between the inhale and exhale. The subtle sense of being before the next idea shows up. That's where awareness lives. Not as a thought. Not as an idea. As the open field in which all things rise. And when you rest in that field, even briefly, something profound becomes clear. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be changed. Right now, in this exact moment, everything is already complete. But we don't believe that, do we? Because the voice always wants more. More clarity. More purpose. More meaning. It treats life like a riddle that needs solving. And because we're so identified with that voice, we end up living in a state of constant striving. Constant dissatisfaction. Even when things are good, the voice whispers, it could be better. You're not there yet. You need to figure it all out. And that's where the illusion of separation gets reinforced, this belief that you are over here, and peace or freedom or presence is over there. That you have to cross some inner distance to get to where you already are. But awareness doesn't exist in the future. It's not a destination. It's the space right now in which the belief in distance is appearing. And once you see that, the whole story starts to collapse. The separate self, the one who's trying to figure everything out, that's the dream character. That's the role consciousness is playing for a while. But it's not the actor. It's not the source. It's not what's truly real. And yes, it can be unsettling to realize you're not who you thought you were. The narrative self gives us a sense of control, a sense of identity, but it's also exhausting, always needing to be managed, defended, upgraded. When that story starts to fall apart, there's a weird kind of grief, but right behind that, there's freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't depend on circumstances. The kind of peace that isn't earned, it's remembered. Watts described this shift as moving from living inside a story to living from presence. And it's not abstract. It changes how you experience everything. You stop reacting automatically to the voice in your head. You stop believing the judgments, the fears, the internal criticism. You see them for what they are, mental weather patterns, temporary and reliable, not personal, and in their place. You start responding from something deeper, a kind of natural intelligence that doesn't come from thought. It's more spontaneous, more authentic. You find yourself saying what's true instead of what's strategic. You act not from who you think you should be, but from who you actually are when you're not performing. And that's what Watts was really pointing toward, not a belief system, but a way of being. A life that isn't lived through the filter of the voice. A life where consciousness stops pretending it's small and starts moving freely, playfully, as itself. Because this whole thing, the self, the story, the striving, it's a game. A cosmic game of hide and seek. Consciousness hiding from itself so it can rediscover itself again and again. That's what gives life its texture, its drama, its humor. And when you see it, you stop taking it all so seriously. You stop trying to win at life and start playing in it. You meet other people not as separate egos, but as other waves in the same ocean. You see through the masks, yours and theirs. And connection stops being something to achieve. It becomes something that's already present, already known, just covered up by noise. And the noise, it's not the enemy. It's part of the play. But now you know it's not you. That's the shift. Not becoming something better, but remembering something true. Not transcending life, but entering it more fully. Not escaping the voice, but hearing it without getting hypnotized. So what now? Keep noticing. Keep pausing. Keep asking simple questions, not to get an answer, but to wake up from the trance. Questions like, who is watching this thought? What is aware right now? Where does this voice come from? And don't try to answer them with your mind. Let them open the door to what's beyond the mind. Because that's where the real self lives, not as a story, not as a voice, but as pure awareness. Always here, always free, always untouched by whatever storm is passing through. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to deserve it. You are it. So let the voice speak. Let the thoughts come and go. But stay with what's watching. Stay with the silence. Stay with what was never born and can never end. And if this brought even a flicker of clarity of something and you recognized what was being pointed to, don't let it fade. Stay with it. Revisit it. Share it. Talk about it. Because this isn't about information. It's about recognition. And once you realize you're the silence, the awareness, the witness, the ever-present field, there's no going back. Not in some dramatic, life is permanently transformed kind of way. It's more subtle than that. More grounded. You'll still hear the voice in your head. You'll still have thoughts, opinions, stories. But something's changed. You see through it now. You stop mistaking the noise for your identity. It's like watching a movie and suddenly realizing, oh, I'm not the character on the screen. I'm the one in the seat, watching the whole thing unfold. The character still runs, cries, freaks out, celebrates, but you don't lose yourself in it anymore. You're present. You're free, even in the middle of chaos. That's what Alan Watts was pointing to, not some mystical escape from life, but a return to life without distortion. Without the constant filter of the inner voice narrating every moment as if it knows what's going on. Because let's be honest, it doesn't. That voice is just playing old tapes. It's made of language, memory, fragments of people's opinions, social conditioning. It's not original. It's not you. It pretends to be. It talks in your tone. It uses your vocabulary. It references your history. But when you really listen, it's hollow. And yet, it runs the show for most people. It convinces you that you're incomplete, that you're behind, that you need to do more, achieve more, fix more. It tells you who you are, what you deserve, what other people think of you. And because we've never learned to question it, we accept it. We suffer under it. We think it's the voice of truth. But it's not truth. It's just thought. Thought pretending to be the narrator of reality. And once you begin to rest in awareness, you see the trick. The thoughts are still there, but they're not so loud anymore. They're not center stage. They float in and out, like clouds across the sky. And you're the sky. Always have been. From there, life gets lighter. Not because your circumstances change, but because your relationship to your mind does. You stop needing to win every argument in your head. You stop obsessively rehearsing conversations. You stop reliving mistakes on loop, trying to mentally fix what's already happened. You start living from a place that doesn't need commentary. That place is always silent, always spacious, always now. And from that space, presence arises not the kind you have to try to access, but the kind that's always here, under the noise. The kind that's been patiently waiting for you to notice it. Watts didn't say this awareness is something to be gained. He said it's something to be recognized. And that recognition is immediate. It's not built. It's not developed. It doesn't require effort. You don't have to get more spiritual. You don't have to meditate for 10 years. You don't have to fix your personality. You just have to see clearly. And clarity comes when you stop believing every thought, especially the ones that say I'm not there yet. I don't get it. This isn't working. Those are thoughts. That's the voice trying to pull you back into identification. But you're already here. You've always been here. You've never not been the awareness. All that's ever happened is that attention got fixated on thought, on form, on story. But even while the story played, awareness never left. It was always the background, holding everything, and touched. And when that clicks, even briefly, everything feels different. Not because you've reached some enlightenment milestone, but because you've remembered what's real. And that remembrance isn't dramatic. It's quiet, still, obvious. Like, oh, it was here the whole time. Because it was. It's here when you're happy. It's here when you're anxious. It's here when your mind is racing. It's here when your mind is blank. It's the one constant in your experience, the part of you that's never changed, not since you were a child. The silent awareness that's always just noticing. And it's not personal. It's not your awareness. It's not separate from the awareness in anyone else. It's the same field, appearing in different forms. Different minds, different bodies, but the same silent observer behind all of it. This is why Watts and so many others talked about unity not as a spiritual belief, but as a lived reality. When you rest in awareness, the boundary between me and you starts to dissolve. The sense of being a separate, struggling ego fades, and what's left is openness, connection, peace. And the irony, you don't gain anything from this. You just lose what was never real. You lose the tension of constantly trying to be someone. You lose the pressure of maintaining a fixed identity. You lose the false belief that you're a voice in your head, separate from the world, responsible for holding everything together. And in that loss, there's so much relief. And if this helped you see more clearly, or reminded you of what you already know deep down, then give it a like. Share it with someone whose mind could use a moment of silence. Leave a comment and let us know how you experience the voice or the silence behind it. And if you want more of this direct, no fluff dives into awareness, consciousness, and the stories we tell ourselves, subscribe. Not to get more knowledge, but to be reminded of what doesn't need to be learned. Because you're not the story. You're not the voice. You're the presence hearing it all now, always, and already free.